Hello, hello, hello. Greetings to you all. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. My name is Rihanna, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of our viewers tapping into this week's Black Mental Health Matters show, where we engage in conversation to deepen our learning about mental health challenges that are impacting the global Black community. Again, I am your host, Rihanna Ebanks Bab, and today we'll be discussing the impact of COVID in regards to the cognitive and psychological situations. So I will play our short video and I'll introduce our guests shortly. Hello, hello, hello. Greetings. Apologies for that previous introduction. So I'll reintroduce myself again. Greetings to you all. My name is Rihanna Ebanks Bab, and today we are going to be discussing the psychological and cognitive impact of COVID-19 on BIPOC communities. So I am your guest, Rihanna Ebanks Bab, and today we'll be joined by a few people that really will be delving into how our communities are impacted psychologically, cognitively, what the issues are, how we can alleviate them. And we'll be discussing that with, first and foremost, I'll introduce Ashley. Welcome to the stage, Ashley. So, Ashley is a, um, where is it? Advocate for bartered men and boys. Ashley, would you like to give our viewers a rounded introduction to who you are, what you do? Thank you.
All right, thanks Rihanna for this platform. So my name is Ashley Bai. I'm a student doing my master's in clinical psychology and psychotherapy. So I'm also an advocate for battered men and boys. So I advocate for abused men, men who are victimized, and also young men who cannot voice out due to our societal rules and everything that hasn't changed yet. So I decided to take one step and advocate for them. That's why I'm involved in mental health issues.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next we
Thank
have
you.
Ethiopia. Ethiopia is also a fellow Black Mental Health Matters show host. But Ethiopia, please introduce yourself to our viewers today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ethiopia Ewart. I am a licensed clinical social worker associate. I work with folks on bettering and having greater mental health and well being.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you. And our third and final guest will be joining us shortly. So I'm going to delve right in with the first question. because I think this is an important topic for us to be discussing, especially as we're coming to the winter months and the likelihood of potential COVID cases spiking. But as today's show is focusing on the psychological and cognitive impact, I think a lot of the time people don't associate the impact that long COVID has had on people's psychological and cognitive abilities. So, Ethiopia, this question is going to be towards you. What is long COVID, and how has it been managed in BIPOC communities?
So long COVID is, well, you get COVID and then you have the residual effects from COVID for an extended period of time.
Hmm.
And um, the length of time is still being discussed, right?
Hmm.
It there's no like set time that we know of. It like long COVID is 6 months or long COVID is 1 year. It's lasting effects of COVID after you've had the symptoms of COVID, the outward symptoms of COVID. And
Hmm.
for me, how it has affected the BIPOC community is that it has exacerbated the um, the day to day trauma that BIPOC folks face because it adds, to the health disparity. It adds to the mental health issues. Having long COVID, also, folks can be very dismissive of you
Mm,
continuing to have symptoms because honestly, I don't think that there's enough awareness around even having long COVID.
mm, mm. Thank you for that. Thank you. Ashley, do you have anything to add? What would you consider long COVID, and how is it being managed in where you are living? Ashley, you with us? Okay. I think Ashley might have frozen. Um, okay. So let's move on to the next question. Hopefully she'll sort out her connection. So whilst I was preparing for this show, I was looking at
Yeah.
some. Oh, are you here, Ashley?
Okay.
Your connection's not too great, Ashley. Maybe if you leave the call and come back, hopefully that might improve the connection. I'm going to move on to the next question though, because this information was quite important, I felt. So I was looking at an article by Forbes, and they highlighted that the neurological and psychological impact of COVID has had the neurological symptoms pertaining to the damage that the virus has caused, either directly or indirectly to the nervous system, while psychological symptoms relate to the behavioral, emotional, and cognitive impairments, kind of like what you said, Ethiopia. But why do you think this is an important issue for us to be focusing on in BIPOC communities? Um,
Ethiopia.
yeah, please. I
I
think
think
Ashley's sorting out her connection.
okay. I think that this is a really important question. Again, just what the literature shows, what we know has been reported by BIPOC communities, is that we are oftentimes dismissed by medical professionals around, you know,
Okay. So all I
mental
can
health.
say is for sure COVID has affected us neurologically
Sorry.
and psychologically because when I'm thinking like psychologically it leaves uh-huh.
No, continue, Ashley. I think there's just a really big time delay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Okay. I'm gonna message Ashley, ask her to try and sort sorts them out. So please continue, Ethiopia, with what you were saying.
So the question was about
The
the
impact on BIPOC
the
communities.
impact and the importance. So if if we just think about the fact that BIPOC folks report that they're already dismissed with mental health issues and also misdiagnosed, um,
Yeah,
and with physical illness, then thing first of all with COVID, how COVID presents is very different for each person,
yeah,
right? And then I think about the fact that when people are unaware that there's long COVID or what the actual effects of COVID, I went through that myself with, thinking symptoms are mild and subsequently folks ended up in the hospital. It's
mm,
it takes the psychological toll first off because you're having that experience, but then secondly, not being not being seen for what
mm,
the actual illness is, I think is also something that adds to a negative experience that you can have afterwards or
mm,
while you're having COVID. I mean, there are numerous stories of people in the BIPOC community going to the hospital and being told to go back home.
yeah,
You know, and then I mean, when COVID hit, when was at its height, um, folks couldn't even visit their loved ones, couldn't see their loved ones.
mm,
There was so much isolation and disconnection in addition to death. So I think
mm,
it just exacerbated, fear. It
yeah,
exacerbated pain. It exacerbated suffering for a community that is already pushed to the margins by how things are set up systematically.
yeah, yeah. And it's a brilliant point that you raised there because that leads me nicely into the next question about isolation and social exclusion. Because yeah, with our communities are very much, you know, interconnected with each other. We're all about community and engagement. So um I know that isolation and social exclusion has risen because of the limited participation in a lot of the social and cultural engagements that we usually have. So, what factors do you think have influenced this the most within BIPOC communities based on the difference then and now?
I think like when we talk about isolation,
Mm,
Um, so what in the work that I do, in the mental health work that I do, I always have racial discrimination, racism, and all of the isms are very
mm,
important to mental health. So
yeah.
these are the frameworks that I engage with my clients, engage in with my clients,
Hmm.
and thinking about how um, you know typically our community is known for being communal,
Mm,
right? For people getting together. And for us using our community as a support system because we have been excluded in many ways by societal
yeah.
means, right? And so here comes COVID where I mean when COVID came in, it was kind of like this thing of like, wow, we don't know what this is, but we know
Mm,
it's killing people. And
hmm.
it's transmitted, but like I can be in the room with you and give it to you. So it was something that was it was new, right? We were learning about it as it was raging on,
Mm,
and it immediately it became this thing of like, who can I be around? Who like
mm,
like I can't be in this space. I can't go here. I can't go there. Things got shut down, and in that shutdown period, in that period of isolation, not only were we connected from disconnected from our community in that way,
hmm.
even though I will say that BIPOC communities here in the United States did rally, did
Mm,
supported each other because in addition to the physical and mental things that were happening because of COVID, there were also like people couldn't go to work, so the people didn't
yeah.
have money and had to pay their rent, and people were getting evicted, and then they had to have a mandatorium to stop people from getting evicted. So when I think about all of that, the load, the weight
Mm,
on someone with all of that, and then on top of that, who do you turn to?
mm,
All of your normal outlets are disconnected.
yeah.
Not only, like for me, the mental health and the physical health are not disconnected.
Yeah.
They are tied in, even though the Western thought has positioned mental health and physical health as a dichotomy, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can just treat the mind or you can just treat the body. But knowing that the mind and the body work so seamlessly together,
Mm.
in healing and in creating disease, right?
Yeah.
That I just feel like the mental part of that mental load made us even more vulnerable
Yeah.
to not only experiencing this COVID in ways that were more detrimental to our community.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what was reported as well. The BIPOC community was the most affected community uh,
Yeah.
with COVID, the most amount of deaths, and I experienced that firsthand. My fiance got COVID. We all got COVID at the same time. The symptoms were mild.
Mm.
He ended up in the hospital and subsequently died. And
Oh.
then I think about also like that period from him entering into the hospital and him
Mm.
dying. It was like almost 2.5 months. I'm
Wow.
not the only person that has experienced something like that, because it was a lot of stuff in the news and stories were being shared with me. And I'm like, wow, can you imagine living through someone fighting for their life for 2.5 months in the hospital? What that
Mm.
does, not only to the person that's in the hospital, but subsequently to the families, which then is the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss. That must have been a really, really painful time for you. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no,
Um, and even in regards to the impact as well, because when it leads to subsequent impairments, the breaking down of your nervous system, the trauma that is held within your body based on the experience that you've endured from having COVID, or even witnessing, like what you mentioned, the mass deaths and everything else politically also that was going on at that time. All of that is harbored within the body and has an impact on both your cognitive and your psychological ability to function, to think, to act. So I can really understand where you're coming from. Thank you for that. Ashley, welcome back. Welcome back. How's your connection? You're on mute, lovely. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you well, and it sounds like the time has synced up.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Amazing, amazing.
Mhm.
So, I know you kind of caught the tail end of what Ethiopia was saying, but I'll throw the question out to you as well. Um,
Okay.
I was saying basically that isolation and social exclusion has risen because of limited participation, in social and cultural engagements that BIPOC communities are used to having. Have you noticed a difference between how we socialize pre-COVID to how we socialize now? And what are those changes that you've seen?
Okay, basically, I can say they've been like a big change from how we socialize now and how we socialized before. Because looking now, we no longer like give each other hugs because people are like afraid of like hugging each other. Because if you hug me, I don't know if you have COVID or
Mhm.
you don't. Currently, like I'm in Poland and people decide they don't wear masks. So
Mm.
I'm from Zimbabwe, and from Zimbabwe we used to wear masks. So every time I see people, I try to make sure that I maintain a social distance
Yeah.
because I don't know if these people are safe or if I'm
Mm.
safe. So when we're talking, we maintain a social distance, and when someone coughs, it's like they look at you. You can't even speak to them. You can't even socialize, or people look at you like in a different way. So
Mm.
it's like if I don't talk to you, I don't talk to you at all. It's
Mm.
because of like, you know, before COVID, you could just interact with anyone because like I know you and we're friends. But now it's like if I don't know you, I don't talk to you.
Mm.
I'm not having that platform to like invite new people in my life because I don't know how healthy wise. Are you healthy? Do you have COVID? Or do you have any other extra like disease or something like that? So I
Mm.
think COVID managed to disengage people into a lot
Mhm.
of activities. People no longer like engage in a lot of activities because they are scared once you engage with people, you might come out with a certain disease. It could be
Yeah.
COVID, it could be an airborne disease. So I think socially, everyone is not available. People are
Mm,
doing their own things as friends, as family. No one wants to interact with anyone they don't know, or anyone. No one talks
mm,
to anyone. In the past, there's like this whole distance. I'm
mm,
black and there's maybe someone who's white. They're like, okay, I'll just try and maintain my distance because already you're from different races, so I don't want to interact with her. So
mm.
there's no that new platform where you can talk to anyone. It's like stick to yourself, stick to your friends, and I'll do the same. That
Yeah.
engagement is no longer there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. And just to kind of highlight a point that you mentioned earlier, Ethiopia, about people going to work. Now, I think people don't account the economic impact on how that has impacted cognitively and psychologically for BIPOC communities. Whether you was furloughed and you had to remain at home and you was receiving a decreased amount of your usual salary. That's what was happening over here in the UK. I don't know about in the US or in Poland, but or people just being made redundant, no longer having space for them to be paid, or businesses having to downsize, all these kind of things. So, looking at the economic impact, what are your opinions on the unemployment rates within BIPOC communities, especially within like frontline workers? What are your thoughts on people being like overworked and maybe having caring responsibilities, having a low income, just the overall economic impact? And I'm going to ask you, Ethiopia.
Thanks. That's another really important question. So I think about the frontline workers first.
Mm,
So I know folks like my fiance, he was fired right before we went into lockdown. So
mhm,
there was like news, like it was like a Thursday that was like we're about to get locked down. He
mhm.
got fired on the Friday,
Wow.
and 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 most of the frontline workers, the folks that had to continue working through
Mm,
COVID, were in the BIPOC community here.
yeah. Same
Right?
here.
Because when we think about that, these are the lower wage jobs.
Mhm,
Right now, you had people that were able to continue to work and they weren't in the lower wage positions because they were able to move to remote working. But when we
mhm,
think about I always want to give a shout out to the people who help maintain the cleanliness of the hospitals,
mhm, mhm.
right? The people that are
Mhm.
cleaning, the people who had to show up for their fast food jobs.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Those people were on the front lines and they had to continue working to keep someone else's business going, but also to continue to provide for their families.
Mm,
So I think that you had those folks who were forced to go to work in addition to those folks who were forced into unemployment.
mm,
And uh what happened here in the United States is that unemployment was high for two reasons. You had the people that that got fired and could not find work because businesses shut down.
mm,
You also had the people who were like, I'm not going to work,
mm, mm,
right? I'm going to protect myself first. And I think that was a very difficult decision for many people because of having to pay the bills.
mm.
You know, unlike many other countries, the United States did like I didn't get it. I didn't even get a check. So I don't even remember exactly how much it was because I didn't get one. But it was like $2,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you like where I live, and I'm not even in a big city, like $2,000 is barely 1 month's rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And this was after months of being in COVID. So thinking about the psychological strain
Mm,
that that causes, there was so much uncertainty,
yeah.
right? And BIPOC folks are oftentimes already pushed into living in a survival mode,
Yeah.
living in a fight, flight, freeze, fawn type of situation,
Yeah.
and then being placed in this situation of so much uncertainty.
Mm,
Again, it's just like it compounds that. It compounds mental unwellness and subsequently physical unwellness, not just because of COVID, right?
mm.
but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, now I'm not sleeping. Now I'm so stressed. Now, you see what I'm saying? And now I can't eat the same, or I'm eating more unhealthy, or I don't have
Yeah.
access to food the same way because everything is shut down. It just created this thing where I felt like, when I think back on, like, particularly that period, because in the United States now things are open. Folks are not wearing masks. Some people are, some
Hmm.
people aren't, but it's like this push to go back to normal has been in effect for a minute now. But at
Hmm.
that time, just the overwhelming sense of uncertainty and
Yeah.
knowing what that does to the mind and to the body.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it was a very intense time, and it makes sense that there would be residual things mentally and
Yeah.
physically after that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been calling it the the prevailing mental health problems that are coming. I've been calling it the next pandemic. So I can definitely agree with you. Welcome, Karen. How are you?
Oh, hi everyone. Good morning. It's actually 8:30 a.m. here. I'm not sure what time zone, but good morning, good afternoon. And I'm sorry that I'm late. My apologies. It was with the timing, so I didn't think I was, you know, I thought I was going to be here before time.
It's okay. It's okay. Fashionably late. It's all right. It's okay. So yeah, welcome, welcome. Do you want to give a brief introduction, Karen, to who you are, what you do? And I'll throw a question to you as well.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. My name is Karen. Asosa Omorige, that's my full name. And I volunteer with Black Mental Health Matters as a talk show host, and also I also do some speaking events. Depends on what I have my expertise in. So I have a psychology degree, and I have worked in the mental health field for some years now. So that's all about me. Nothing too much.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So, as you've just arrived, I'll throw out the same question to you as well, and then I'll move over to Ashley for her thoughts. But Ethiopia was just explaining what her thoughts are around the economic impact on particularly frontline workers who usually are from BIPOC communities. So, what are your thoughts on how the economic impact or disadvantage has impacted people from BIPOC communities psychologically and cognitively?
Okay, economically, you mean,
Yes,
or all around?
economically.
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. So yes, I know a couple of people. I worked in the front line during the COVID-19 pandemic. I worked
Hmm.
as a community health ambassador, like just helping people spreading COVID-19 awareness. So I think economically, some people, like mainly like the visible minorities, we are struggling financially because businesses were closed down, their sources of income, most of them are entrepreneurs. Some of them who work also got laid off, because of the whole because businesses were closed down, then most of them got laid off. And you know it was really hard, I think,
Hmm.
hard on them, hard with, like, especially people who have like families, right? You have kids to take care of and things like that. So I think it took a toll on most people, and it actually affected most people from, like, like from the minority groups, because
Mm,
we were like the first to get laid off, you know what I mean? Even
mm,
from like our jobs. And yeah, so I think it took a very hard toll on us.
yeah, yeah. And what's your opinion on how it impacts you mentally, psychologically?
um I think it caused a lot of anxiety. For me personally, I think anxiety of not knowing, okay, what's going to happen next. Am I going to
Mm,
job? How am I going to take care of my family? Like, it was actually cost. I think it caused a lot of anxiety for me personally. I think for all
mm,
other people, they might have probably struggled with anxiety, because
mm,
anxiety, depression, from the whole uncertainty of how things work. Because like when you get laid off from your job, you're not really sure what's going to happen next. It's a pandemic, most businesses are closed.
yeah.
Even hiring is going to be really difficult, except you work in the healthcare industry. And I
Mm,
know that they needed a lot of people in the healthcare industry, but it was really hard. So I
mm,
think a lot of people struggle with anxiety, like,
mm, mm,
yeah, mainly because of the
yeah.
COVID-19, the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we've got a comment here from Arena. She says, I work in the health field where I had to make a decision to stay home because my kids were home. And I know that that was definitely a decision many parents had to make. So, Ashley, what are your thoughts on people like Arena and others that had to make those make or break the decisions on whether to go to work, whether to stay at home, and how that can impact someone psychologically and cognitively?
Okay, I'll say, okay, I have this article that I've been reading, and there's this lady, she was saying that during the first days of COVID, I was going to work, but it wasn't that really intense. But
Mm,
when COVID began to be intense, she was now scared that she would bring the COVID from work back to her kids.
mm,
So she was juggling two things now, going to work and taking care
mm,
of the kids. And then
mhm,
she was like, during the COVID period, she then dropped like going to work, and then she started to stay home. And she's like, I had this whole frustration, I had anxiety, I had stress because I had to pay for my bills, I had to take care of my kids, but at the same time, I'm not working. I'm a single mother. So
mm,
she's like, she had to find ways on how to take care of the kids at the same time, not bringing COVID to the kids and her not being affected. So
yeah.
I think it caused a lot of problems because she didn't know where to go, who to call, because everyone was going through this situation. So
Mm,
she was like, now from work I'm not going and I cannot work from home because already the kids are small, they'll disturb. So she was like, mentally I couldn't function at all because every time I sleep, every time when I'm walking, I'm
mm,
thinking, how am I going to feed my kids? If I go to work, I'm afraid that I'll be like in contact with someone with COVID and I'll be infected. So I
mm,
think economically everyone was brought down because some of the people even lost their jobs, and she was one of them. So she's like, I was really affected because I had no supply for my kids and I had
mm,
no one to turn to. So I think this had a great impact because she's like, I'm always anxious, I don't know where and how to get money, what to
mm,
do next for my kids, should they go to school or what should I do myself? So I
mm,
think mentally she wasn't available. Physically, as a mother, as an individual, also, she was beginning to be absent because she was trying to juggle two things at the same time. So she
mm,
was affected more as a mother and then her as an individual. So
yeah.
she's like, I have to take care of my kids and I have to take care of myself.
Yeah.
So since she wasn't mentally available, she tried to stand as a strong mother, but at some point she's like, it was too much for me. I managed to pull through, but I think this whole period was a tough time for her. So she was like anxious throughout the whole period.
Mm, mm. It's very common. A lot of people are definitely experience a lot of health anxiety, PTSD, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, burnout, whatever you may call it, and that in itself has a really significant impact on your cognitive and neurological functioning. I was reading a study that showed that contracting COVID can play a role in impacting your attention, your memory, your language, and your visuospatial ability. Um,
Mhm.
what support do you think people from BIPOC communities need to have to be safely rehabilitated back into communities after contracting COVID? So I'm going to ask Ethiopia this question first.
Like you're asking that question, Rihanna, and I'm like taking a deep breath. I'm like, whew,
I know it's a loaded
right?
one, but a lot of the time we don't talk about these really nitty gritty things, and I think it's really important for us to look at the different elements of cognition and how what support we are receiving and safely being reintegrated back into communities is the main thing safely. So
Right.
go
And
ahead.
the reason why I was like, whew, is because it goes back to how our society is set up to begin with, right?
Mm,
The reason why we have the greater disparity with mental health issues, with unemployment, is because it's systematic.
mm,
So in that respect, for me, in hearing that question, it's thinking about like, well, what do governments do to acknowledge that there is systemic violence being put on our community, on
mm,
BIPOC communities,
mm,
right? It's not, we're not unemployed because we're lazy.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like when people were like, oh yeah, like everything's opening back up, they need people to work. We still were the last ones picked. And like I think Karen mentioned, like first ones fired. It was first ones fired, last one hired kind of situation. Right. And so like I look at the system, I look at the macro of it. And what that support looks like is first the acknowledgement that there is that the disparity exists because there is systematic there's a system that is in place that marginalizes BIPOC communities, right? And then because it's so deep, right? Like that the doctors must understand or have a greater awareness that I might be biased against this person. I might not even, like I might like I have to do better in looking to support this person. I must see this person as a reflection of me, or even or maybe even greater than me, right? Because I don't know how people think about themselves, but the whole concept of what is human has been determined by whiteness, right? And so if that is the situation that we're dealing with, then we're not even being seen as human. How does that play out into who gets the job, who gets adequate or not even adequate, who gets appropriate treatment?
Yeah.
Like how does that cause us to move in this world? And that's why it feels so big for me, because the support that I would love to see is first they acknowledge, just folks even acknowledging that the disparity is real.
Yeah.
And that we need to go hard for these people who have been pushed to the margins forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also
Thank
just
you.
wanted to add in actually what she said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, she's actually very right. I work like in the healthcare industry. It was now in the COVID time that I saw more people like minorities working. Like if you reach through the statistics, through the research, we had more minorities working on the front line, like dealing with the COVID. You know what I mean? Not in my positions, like we were working front line, dealing with the challenges. So the question is like, what resources have we gotten? And if statistics it's telling us, okay, more minorities we actually hired, during the, just to deal with the whole physical aspect of it. You know what I mean? So that itself is also a barrier. It's also like, because yes, you're working, yes, you're earning the money, but then again, the psychological effect, the health, if you know what I mean. So the whole thing we are dealing with. So this is all like everything we still have to deal with because of who we are. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree. And Ashley, what's your thoughts on what support is needed for this rehabilitation to safely take place for BIPOC communities?
Okay, so as for me, I think we really need more of like psychologists, mental advocates, and everyone who's going to be advocating for this thing, because during the COVID period, there was a whole lot of like negative energy. Everyone was like, I'm afraid to die. I'm
Mm,
feeling anxious. I'm frustrated. I'm having stress. No one came with a positive energy to say, no, we can conquer COVID. We can do this. Guys, we can fight this thing. So I think for us to like change this whole impact, it started from our mind. So we
mm,
needed someone who was going to educate, like, okay, right now we're in the COVID era, but guys, we can conquer it. Let's
mm,
just do the procedures that they want us to do. If they say let's wear a mask. Like everyone needed to hear the good news, because
mm,
all the time people will be talking like, I have my dead uncle, I have my dead brother. Like it was all the negative energy around everyone. So the more people spoke about the negative energy, that's the more people got scared. It was
mhm.
broadcasted everywhere you
Fear
go. It's
mongering.
just dead. Yeah.
Mm,
Everywhere you turn, it's just dead. Everywhere you just look, it's like you're breathing COVID-19.
yeah.
So we just needed a different perspective where we can say, okay, it's COVID-19 period, but we can do this, guys. We
Mm,
can conquer COVID-19. So the more we change that thought distortions, we put it into the right direction, I
mm,
believe it was going to change the way how people approach COVID, even
mm,
in a behavioral way, because now people are behaving like, okay, if I touch you or if I'm close to you, I already have COVID.
mm,
We just had to like sing that thing that if a person coughs, the next thing is COVID. but
Yeah.
maybe it's just a simple cough. So I think it was just a matter of like, okay, let's change the way we think. Let's
Mm,
just change the way we behave. That way, everything starts from the mind, and then the body reacts to what you're thinking.
mm,
So if you're like, we can do this, we can conquer COVID, and everything else will become easy as time goes on. I
yeah.
think that's one way that was going to help the people community, and it was going to be easy for us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Hey,
you.
I'm sorry, Rihanna. Can I
Yeah,
jump
feel
in real
free,
fast?
jump in.
Ashley, that was like absolutely beautiful what you said, and it really got me reflecting on the fact that yeah, like there was so much misinformation, but everything was
Yes,
negative. I didn't hear
yes,
anybody say, "Listen, this is what we can do."
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right? It was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, wear a mask. Oh, but that doesn't even work. How can that work?" And like it and swirling around in so much negativity and so much
Uh-huh.
uncertainty. Yes, it's like wow, like what difference would it have been if we heard just one person say
Yes,
we can conquer this instead of
Yeah.
like,
yes.
well, there's nothing we can do, we just a lot of people gonna die, and
Yeah.
well, sorry. I think that's a very important thing that you mentioned, and I'm thankful that you shared that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
It's true because there was a lot of difficult conversations being had, and because I think since COVID has happened, there's been so many different events that have followed since then. It's like the trauma doesn't stop. The trauma doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
The depression
You
keeps
keep
going. The grief
going.
keeps coming.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I know we've focused a lot on like frontline workers, and I want to
Yeah.
shift the focus over to the children that have been
Mm-hmm.
impacted, because we know that now there's a global push for investment in children's mental health services. Karen, you also mentioned about needing more posts within psychology. I know over here in the UK, there is a new initiative where there's a mental health wellbeing practitioner that you don't have to be a qualified therapist or anything, but you can receive that psychological development through a psychology pathway. So, um, especially for children's services, they are implementing a lot of these positions in schools, in colleges, and universities as well. But what impact do you think this will have on BIPOC children? And this question I'll ask Karen first. You're on mute, Karen. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. Oh,
There we go.
thank you very much for that question. So you mean what impact will this
Having these new posts in schools and in colleges, what impact do you think that will have for the children that have experienced this situation as well, alongside the adults?
like with I think it would be great, like with if the government bring these resources in to actually sincere funding for child mental health. I think it would be fantastic. But then again, like when they are doing this, they also have to be sure that they are doing it in the right way.
Hmm.
For example, like bringing in people that are culturally trained to help the
Hmm.
kids,
Hmm.
like integrating their culture into their mental health.
Yeah.
So bringing people that are culturally competent
Yeah.
come to the kids, bringing in activities that are that the kids are used to, and that they were enjoying before.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, it's going to be a great initiative, but the government should definitely take into perspective someone like like one of the minorities, minority view, or they should just take into perspective like the cultural context of everything they're doing too, not just like for everybody, but specifically for different people from different races. I, I don't know if I explained it.
Yeah, you did greatly. You did. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ashley, in your perspective, I know you're in Poland. So, um, first of all, what investment have you seen in children's mental health services for specifically BIPOC communities as well? But what impact do you think it will have on them?
I think it's like having a great impact. I'm new here, but there's this group that I'm also like working with. So it's like they have this like mental health campaigns. So
Hmm.
every week we meet and then we educate each other. Okay, so we're a mental health group. So this is what happens. So we make sure that we spread the word out there. and then
Mm,
everyone understand. And for the BIPOC children, I think they're really grasping it well because they are more interested in learning. They want to invest a lot because there are some companies that are also funding them. So they're
mm,
also willing to learn. They're like, okay, we want to be into this thing so that we can help others.
mm, That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Ethiopia, whereabouts in the States, is there any movements or investments that you've seen supporting BIPOC children, and what impact do you think it will have for them?
So I believe that the Department of Health and Human Services, with the government, there was like an initiative to support Black youth and BIPOC youth mental health.
Mm,
Um, and I can't remember the amount, but like maybe it was a couple of $1 million, which I feel in one respect, you like, yay, there's a money. And then you like, it's like what needs to happen needs to, for me, there needs to be a greater investment.
mm,
Um, because of COVID in the US, there like BIPOC children were almost 5 times more likely to be orphaned,
mm.
either losing one
Wow,
or both parents, right?
wow.
So there's the next part of the pandemic. You have all of these orphans, right? My children have experienced this, and so
Mm,
knowing that and the children, like, we know about mirror neurons, right?
mm-hmm,
So that whole energy, like Ashley saying, like, well, we didn't hear anything positive, right? Everything's negative, and everybody's in
mm,
fear and uncertainty, and everybody's just mirroring, and we're all like afraid and out of control.
mm.
And so, like, the children also live through that with us,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and then if subsequently losing a parent or losing both parents
yeah.
happen, then yeah, there needs to be things that are in place for that. Now, on the local level, I don't know of anything happening.
Mm,
Really,
mm,
outside of not anything that is like through the government or anything like that. I know what BIPOC communities will know. Like, we have this thing where we know what we need and we're going to make it happen, type of thing.
yeah,
And while that is beautiful and I respect that deeply, I also feel like it needs to be on a more macro level. It can't
yeah,
just be our responsibility to take care of us, right?
yeah.
So I think that there is the initiative within the Department of Health and Human Services here, um, but I think that more can be done because BIPOC children were almost 5 times more likely to experience the loss of a parent. And what does
Mm,
that do? What does the loss of a parent or both parents do? That spins you into a whole nother level of uncertainty, right?
mm,
Like, my fiance was the only person working when he died,
yeah,
right? And then he was in the hospital for 2.5 months. So during that time, I'm like every day, like, I was at the hospital so much, and then I was having panic attacks, and I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old about to turn 5. So they were 9 and 4 at the time. And
mm,
so they were going through that with me,
yeah,
and people couldn't come into our house.
yeah,
Like, folks would come and drop off groceries for us. I couldn't even go out a lot of times because of how everything was playing out in my life. And so when he died, it was like, well, what am I gonna do? How do I maintain? How do I keep a place for us to live? How do like, all of these questions came, and thankfully I have the support that I'm figuring things out, but not everybody has that.
yeah,
People may be forced into moving. People may lose their apartment. Children may get separated, from their siblings and move to a different. All of these things happen. And so the network of mental health support that needs to be in place to support
mm,
that, it needs to be a serious investment. I don't feel like we've gotten to that point. I'm thankful for what has happened, but I think that there needs to be a greater investment.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And I want to highlight this comment as well. Arena has mentioned that build a community inside the community for support. And I find that where central government aren't able to accommodate certain needs, we have to look to community grassroots organizations, third sector organizations to kind of fill those gaps. And I just want to ask you all, have you noticed any community or grassroots organizations doing amazing things to support both adults and children within the BIPOC community? I'll ask you, Ashley, first.
Yeah, I've seen it happen because Here in Poland, there's a GoFundMe
Mm-hmm.
where we have to like look for donations so that we can fund those children and other
Mm-hmm.
families who lost their breadwinners.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like every shop there's an individual who's placed there, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you, okay, during the COVID period, their kids who lost their mother, father, uncles, so they've
Mm-hmm.
no one to tend to, they've no one to go to. So we're just going through this GoFundMe. If you food, if you've got clothes, blankets, or anything, would love it if you fund. So I love it here because people are so open and they're
Mm-hmm.
really providing support and helping
Oh, I think Ashley's frozen. Hope she comes back. Whilst we're waiting for Ashley to come back, Karen, do you want to explore any of the services that you've noticed supporting BIPOC children from like grassroots or community organizations? You're on mute.
Okay. I don't know. My bad. Thank you for that question. I'm not really sure about any for now. I know I did last year when I was working on the COVID-19 side of things. I know I did work for an organization that also had like youth, what's it called? They do youth advocacy, and also they had children, yeah, children and youth advocacy. So I think they got some funding from the government.
Mm-hmm.
They got some funding from the government of Ontario, and they were able to put some programs in place for BIPOC children, mainly Black
Mm,
African and Caribbean children. So
mm,
that's the only one I have.
mm.
I
And
have
where in the world are you
one.
referring to when you're speaking about this one?
Sorry,
Where in the world are you talking? Are you talking about in Canada?
this is in Canada. This is in
Yeah.
Ontario. Yeah, so they
Okay.
provided some funding for the organization. It's a Black
Mm-hmm.
African Caribbean organization. I think they also do child and youth advocacy for BIPOC,
Amazing.
for Black African and Caribbean youths and children.
Mm,
So yeah, I think I did see it. That was 2021. Yeah,
mm,
21. So
amazing.
they might actually be couple more. I've just not done my research. Maybe like
Yeah.
most likely going to be general organizations like Canadian Mental Health Association. It's probably just going to be general, but for like
Yeah.
Black African and Caribbean, it's just the organization I had worked with last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Ethiopia. Um,
Yeah, I've seen amazing things. I've read of
mm,
amazing things. Like I have, like I said, I have so much deep respect for what we are able to do.
mm-hmm.
Um, Twitter, Black Twitter was used here in the
Yeah.
US, and like there was so much organizing, there was so much raising of funds for folks, so that people could live.
Mm,
And that's the one thing that I do know, in my lifetime, what I have seen is that we are able, BIPOC communities are able to continue to support us,
mm,
right? We get in there because we know that the gaps are there. We
yeah.
experience that, we live that. And that's why my call is for there to be greater investment in our communities, because the thing is that we got to move from just being in survival mode into thrival mode. We got to
Yeah.
get out of just being in survival mode. And I feel like, I think about the folks that are the grassroots workers, and how you got to apply for the grants, and you got this
Mm,
little patch of money coming in here and this little patch of money coming in here, and $5,000, and it's just like, yo, you can make beautiful things happen. I think about those people also. I think about the load that they carry and trying to get
yeah.
things done, because the need is so great and
Yeah.
the investment is so paltry, right?
Yeah.
So like, I just feel like there just needs to be more, and not more from the community, not more from the grassroots workers, not more from the BIPOC community, more from government, to invest in our communities so that we have a greater opportunity for more growth and healing, right?
Yeah.
Because we make things happen with, like like I'm thinking about, for example, with like soul food, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, like the pig's tails, the chitlins, the pig's feet, all of these things were because this is what we could eat, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
what was given to us when we were enslaved people, right?
Mm.
And so we made a meal, right? We
Mm.
made it taste good. We used
Resourcefulness.
right, resourceful, resiliency, and
Mm.
like, yo, what does it look like to have the whole pig? I don't eat pork at all, so it's hard for me to even say that. But what does it look like for us to have the whole animal instead of it just being, or the whole meal instead of what is just, the end parts that are thrown at us?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
can you do
What
with
can we
that?
produce? Yeah,
You see what I'm
it's
saying?
true.
And so that's where I am with it. And again, big shout out to the folks that are on the front lines, grassroots. I know all over this world we are making it happen.
Mm,
And
mm.
imagine what more beautiful things can be done with greater investment in us.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so my next question, it's gonna be a bit of a testy one, but I'm gonna throw it out anyway. I'm gonna kind of highlight the fact that whilst we know that we've spoken a lot about the impact of COVID on our psychological and cognitive abilities, we know that there's also the emotional aspect that we had to endure as well. And you spoke, Ethiopia, just now about the load. Now, I'm sure many of you will be familiar that during the pandemic, there was the global protests following the death and murder of George Floyd, and balancing the two was a lot. It was a lot. Worldwide, it was a lot. So I'm going to ask this question, first of all, to Ashley. In Poland, um, what was that experience like for people, and how do you think people from BIPOC communities were able to juggle both the pandemic emotions and the emotions of George Floyd, and how did people survive?
Okay, first of all, I'm new here in Poland, but I'll just say from the few people that I've met and spoke to. So
Hmm.
they said they felt sad that this is what happened to George Floyd and his family, and they're just passing their condolences. And then during that period, that's when COVID happened. So they were like, we don't feel safe anymore
Mm,
because whenever the police are approaching us, we don't know what's going to happen to us. Either I'm right or I'm wrong. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know
mm,
if I'm next or I'm going to be the third or the fourth. And
mm,
then COVID came now. So it's like they were now juggling two situations at the same time. There is COVID and there's the issue of George Floyd. So with
mm,
the issue of George Floyd, they're like, okay, everyone stay indoors. So my friend was telling me that we were told to stay indoors.
mm,
Certain people are allowed to go out and other certain people are not allowed to go out. So
mm,
depending on the company that you work with, here in Poland, there are like companies that say you can work from home and there are those that say come on site. So
mm,
it depends. Either you lost your job, you would go on site, but when you go on site, you have your full mask, you have your full kit. They would monitor all those things every day. So if you don't have your hand sanitizer, you're out
mm,
because you cannot prevent yourself. And if you cannot prevent yourself, you cannot protect others around you.
mm, mm,
So she was like, we went through a hard time because now already I'm from the BIPOC community. I'm different from everyone. No
mm,
one wanted to look at me. So already like I'm from a different community, it's frustrating.
mm,
Sitting next to it's like when you get into a bus and you sit next to the other person, they would stand up and leave. So
mm,
you start asking yourself questions now. What did I do?
mm,
Am I walking disease? Am I carrying COVID? What's going on?
mm,
So it's like she was saying, we were anxious all the time.
mm,
We were mourning George Floyd and we're now having COVID-19. They were frustrated, like everything is happening right now at once, and we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say or what not to say. So it's
mm.
like they had a whole lot of emotions, but they had no one to confront or who
Yeah,
to tell because a lot of things were going on, and they had no one during that time to support them. So it was
mm,
like each man for himself, God for us all. So they
yeah,
had to fight for their own space so that they can survive.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me because many areas of where protests were happening, like I know there was global protests, but it's that conflict of wanting to show solidarity and protest and feel like you need to be heard and seen, but also the fear of going out and contracting COVID and just the fear all around of whether, like you said, whether you're next or whether you even protesting is going to get you in trouble. So Ethiopia, I know you're based in the US. Like, what was it like in that time? What was permeating through the air, I guess?
Yeah, it was, you know, a similar kind of thing of like folks wanting to be out, and um so the protest popped off first in Minneapolis, right? I
Mm,
have family in Minneapolis. Actually, I was out there in that same area. My cousin lives right there where all that stuff was going down,
mm-hmm,
and we I was out there the year before. Um but people flew in. People, people were wanted to be a part of it, and I think that that was more than the concern for um about COVID. However,
mm,
there was a big discussion, a big debate here where folks were like, that's just spreading COVID. I forget what
exactly.
they call it, super spreader. That
Super spreaders, yeah.
people going and there's a super spreader, and so there were different narratives and different debating points. But it was very active. Folks wanted to protest, and
Mm-hmm,
folks, it has been discussed that this was a result of folks being at home and being able to actually see, like not being, taken away to the job every day and being stressed out by work, and just having to sit home. And when they saw it, that's what got, not just, it wasn't
mm-hmm,
just Black folks, it wasn't just BIPOC
exactly.
people, it was just like a lot of people wanted to be a part of the protest, and showing their disapproval
Mm,
of what had actually gone down with George Floyd.
mm.
Um, yeah, I think that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Karen, from a Canadian perspective, what was things like on the ground over there when the protests were, yeah, was there protests in Canada? I'm sure there probably was, but what was
Oh,
it like?
there definitely was a protest. There was a protest here in Winnipeg. I
Mhm.
did go for the protest. I
Mhm.
went with my now husband. But yeah, we did go for the protest, and honestly, it was good. Like here in Winnipeg, it was good. Like it was organized pretty well, and
Mhm.
yeah, it went really well for us here in Toronto. I think I saw the protest. I don't know. I wasn't there physically, but I think a lot of people came. Like she said, it wasn't just the BIPOC community, which was good.
Mhm.
Like all the people came, all the races. It just made everyone feel welcomed and safe.
Mhm.
So like we did go out, and I felt like it was even good. Because that's just something like we talked about several things, not just aside just George Floyd. Like we talked about Breonna Taylor. There were other people who
Mhm.
also got, though he's like the most popular case, but like
Yeah.
there are other people who also suffered, who has also suffered like from police violence in the past.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
no one talks about it, right? Even that has even gone through worse
Mhm.
violence. So I think that was just a period for people to come out and pour out their emotions and their frustrations. Yeah, I think it went well here.
Mhm.
It was good. I mentally it wasn't like, it caused a lot of people anxiety, with the whole like I was afraid, like I was afraid because like my husband is Black, right? So he's
Mhm.
tall and huge, and he can
Yeah.
get stopped tomorrow, and don't not it happens. I think Toronto might be worse actually when it comes to police violence.
Mm.
Yeah, but here's a little bit better actually,
Okay.
compared to the US or Toronto. But
Yeah.
I still had anxiety, when
Mhm.
I have a brother, I have a cousin who's, they look big, but
Yeah.
like they could easily be mistaken for any person, like, based
Yeah.
on the color of their skin. So I think it caused a lot of anxiety. That
Mm.
for sure, with the whole like the killings, it caused a lot of anxiety and
Mhm.
mistrust.
Yeah.
So that most people are like, oh, I don't trust the government anymore. They don't have the people at heart. They don't have, BIPOC communities at heart. They're just there for their own self interest. So
Mm.
I think it caused a lot of anxiety, mistrust, and paranoia for most people. Most BIPOC
Mm.
people, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all of you providing some insight, a global insight, I guess. So my last question to you before I ask what your projects are, um, we know that there has also been some positive impact because of COVID. So it's kind of opened up a virtual global community so we can have things like this, like platforms like this, where we can raise awareness or build community. Now, what are the positive impacts of COVID on the global platforms that we do have and we are able to access on our psychological and mental health? So I will throw this out to, I'll go back to Karen.
Okay.
You're on. Yeah, there we go.
For there have been positive impacts from this COVID. I think like this COVID has actually made our community more smaller because I think people are now working more like it became remote work became popular. Like most
Mm,
people opt in for remote work, and
mm,
also like with I don't know, according to the stories I hear from like people who work in corporate, my friends, people on social media, I heard that like they've had like experience with reduced microaggression because they're
mm,
not coming to the office and have to pretend to be who they're not, and
mhm.
like remote work has actually subdued everything, and they feel safer working from home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So to me, I think it is. That's in that aspect, it has some positive impact.
yeah.
Also, like this talk show now is COVID. That's why I joined. I
Mm,
started remotely and it was worldwide. We can actually connect. Like you live in the UK, Ethiopia lives in the US, and she lives in Poland. So like
mhm,
I feel like it has made our community really small. Like we can
mm.
like host, you know, talk shows and do it globally. And I think that's a positive impact for me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Ashley, what about yourself?
I
What
want
do
to
you think?
one more important
Oh,
thing. I feel like
yeah,
because of
sure.
COVID and George Floyd, because so many things happened, especially 2020.
Mhm,
I don't know. I wouldn't say it was the worst year ever, actually, but I feel like so many life changes happened, like
mm,
in a click, you know, like so many things happen. And because of all of this, I feel like maybe the government kind of were they were more involved in the BIPOC community. They weren't as involved before the COVID happened.
mm,
You know what I mean? In terms of like funding the BIPOC community, giving them funds for mental health, they didn't feel like it was important. I don't know why. But like
mm,
realized that more communities that are BIPOC are actually coming up now. They have fundings, they have available job positions. You know what I mean? Like
mhm.
I have been, it's just something that I've observed, but I don't know
Yeah,
if it's wrong, but it's just what I've observed. I think the government is actually bringing that in now, which is actually great. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's definitely highlighted where a lot of the disparities are, in healthcare, in social care, in education, in workplaces, and now having a focus to actually be able to address some of the issues, and like what you said about investment. So yeah, I agree there with you. But yeah, back to you, Ashley. What was you wanting to add to that question?
Okay, I think the positive side is that people now understand the value of their mental health
Yeah.
because we knew there's stress, we knew there's depression, we knew there's anxiety, but we have never experienced it. But
Mm,
COVID brought out all those symptoms. People
mm,
understand how to be anxious feels like, people understand how to be depressed, losing your loved ones, how it feels like. So they are now more even interested to learn about mental health. There are
yeah.
now like a lot of mental health organizations that are being developed and they're willing to educate people. And the
Yeah.
good thing is people are willing to join these meetings, either physically or these online meetings. So people are like, okay, we want to learn and we want to engage in these things. When
Mm,
we learn, we're also going to teach someone. So it's now a race. I learn here and someone is watching. So that person
mhm,
is going to tell someone, that someone is going to tell someone. So it's now
mm.
like the
A ripple
negative
effect.
and the positive, yeah, is now
Mm,
going. Everyone
mm,
is understanding, okay, you can be anxious. It's okay to be anxious, but that can be treated. Because
yeah.
people believe that if I'm depressed, it means I'm sick or I'm demon possessed. So I won't need to see a doctor. But people now understand that, okay, you can have depression, but we can heal that. So
Mm,
people now know because the message is out there. and it also brought people from different countries to be like united, because
Yeah.
right now I can see we're from different countries and we're discussing the same issue. So
Yeah.
I believe COVID has managed to like build this one worldwide community that
Hmm.
people understand each other from different countries. Okay, like from my country, this is what's going on. From my country, this is what's going on. So
Yeah.
people are bringing in different ideas. So you'll be like, okay, this hasn't happened yet in my community, so I
Yeah.
can prevent it this way. So
Yeah.
you already prepared for it. When it comes, you're able to handle it. So it's like you're ahead before the situation even comes. So
Yeah.
that's another positive thing. Plus, also, there are now more online platforms where mental health is being taught, everyone is learning. So I believe that's one good thing that came out of COVID.
Yeah, I agree. The responsiveness definitely is
Hmm.
something that I think no matter what, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how to prepare. I
Hmm.
think should something like COVID happen again, we'd have a heightened awareness and responsiveness about us, whatever country we're in, you know?
Yeah.
So I agree with you there. Thank you for that, Ashley. Ethiopia, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I appreciate what both Karen and Ashley shared because I think it's very important, right? The technology, the use of the technology. Like Erina said, more virtual jobs are available, which was very
Yeah.
important for a single parent like herself, and um, and then also like greater access or a greater discussion about mental health. And I
Hmm.
think that COVID, because it was a universal human experience, right?
Hmm.
Like I remember hearing when it was in China, and it was like, "Oh, that's in China." Like I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that's in China," and then it was like, "Boom!" It's like it was just like boom, boom, boom. Right? It was global,
Mm.
and because it was global, we had a shared experience with it, and even though it created isolation, like both Ashley and Karen mentioned, it created a global connection.
Yeah.
And so in that way I think that was a positive. I think it also m- gave us a greater awareness of the value of connection, which is
Yeah.
why people I think went to support their mental health.
Mm.
They had that, even though you might have been more stressed out and trying to figure some things out, it was like, yo, I got to take care of myself. It was that serious. It was like it's life and death, right? Like COVID was death,
Mm.
right? And so I think that those things were like some positives that come from COVID, that not only the use of technology that created connection through in a time when we were very isolated,
Mhm.
acknowledging that mental health is important and folks really wanting to take care of their mental health because of how we were able to connect. I
Yeah.
think that those things were important.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I think my addition to that is, I know earlier you spoke about us not treating one without the other, so our mind without the body, and something that I've definitely personally I've done myself, but I see across a lot of platforms is a greater awareness on your physical health education, what you're eating, what you're drinking, how to reduce inflammation, natural herbs that can support with your well-being, body cleanses, all these kind of different things that people may not have practiced before, but there's more health awareness and the impact of what your physical health can do and impact on your mental health, your cognitive health, your psychological health. So that's definitely something that I've seen an increase in. And we've got here that Arena says better relationships. I think in regards to that, I think it's more honest relationships because people don't know what is going to happen, what time they have left, even. So honesty in relationships, whether it is okay, I'm going to cut you off because this is what it is, and we're not wasting time here, or actually telling those that I love you. I don't know when the next time is. I can tell you, I can hug you. So I think it's the honesty in relationships, I'd say. So thank you everyone. So as we round up, I'm just going to ask you all to just let me know what projects you've got coming up, where people can find you. So, Karen, what projects do you have coming up, and where can people find you? You're on mute again, my love.
I don't have anything coming up right now. Sorry, I had to go. Like I
No,
have
it's okay.
something for me, so I don't know. I I'll have to actually leave now. But like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't really have anything. But if I do, I would definitely let the what's it called organizer and the host know about it. So
Amazing. And just before you go, where can people find you
um
if they want to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. My name is
LinkedIn.
Karen. That is my name on LinkedIn. Karen Esosa Omorie, so you can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you. I know you need to go, so safe journey, and speak soon.
All right, okay, bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye. And Ethiopia, what do you have coming up next? Any projects or body of work, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I got some stuff coming up. I'm developing a framework as we speak,
Hmm.
that is going to be supportive of folks' overall well-being.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping to launch, not hoping, I will be launching that next year, you know, beyond the mid of the year next year. I'm opening my
Amazing.
own practice of psychotherapeutic services, and my company is named Peony Wellness. You
Hmm.
can find me on LinkedIn. Um, that's probably the best thing. But I'm
Yeah.
also a host for Black Mental Health Matters, so who knows? You might see me soon.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much for that. And last but not least, Ashley, do you have any projects coming up? Any body of work you might be releasing? And where can people find you if they want to connect?
As of now, I'm not yet done writing my blog because I'm also writing my blogs.
Hmm.
So I'm not yet done. So I haven't published anything after a long time, but there's something that I'm currently writing.
Okay.
So maybe I'll post like the link on my Instagram so they can look on Miss underscore Ashley Bay 97.
97. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining today. Um, and that concludes the end of our show. Thank you all for your time, your input, your insight. It's been an amazing, amazing show, and also your personal stories. I think it's very important for us to discuss a range of different topics around Black mental health. And this show today was around understanding the impact, the psychological and cognitive impact of COVID-19 on BIPOC communities. I hope the viewers have enjoyed today's show. Make sure you tune in next week for our follow up show as well. And have a blessed and most beautiful day. Take care. Ladies, say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.